Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday. The video I tried to pull yesterday ran. So far so good. I'm still waiting for hater bombs to go off. So far it's just one guy who's really mad at me, and after saying he was done with me, continues to follow me around the internet, sending nasty comments everywhere he possibly can, talking about how unwilling to listen I am to his reasonable conservative opinion. He happens to be a conservative. It's funny. The anti-capitalists got super bored with me. Within 24 hours. This guy, for whatever reason, is just burning with a white hot anger. And I'm really not sure why, because I haven't directly responded to him in 2 days. Other people have been telling him he's not responding in such a smart way. But if you like this sort of content, even when it's not supposed to be released to the public, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. I will admit, I've been really, really affected by what happened over the weekend, and it has really thrown me off. I am torn between caring very much about what I'm seeing, caring, not caring, and wanting to do something and not knowing what not the right thing to do is, but the thing that will be done in the spirit it is given in, instead of people reading in a bunch of stuff because they're bringing their own damage to the table. And what I finally, decided is I know there are black and brown people that watch this channel. I know they do not subscribe to the sort of organized protest movement that's very connected to economic left-wing stuff and therefore hate my guts. So I'm going to make content for my audience. And if people want to come in here and crash the party and scream and yell, so be it. But I'm going to make content for my regular viewers, because they're the ones that are patrons. They're the ones that are, regular supporters. These people who are just furious and want to beat up on someone. And ironically think I'm a safe target because I'm white. Irony, irony. They'll come, they'll go. They'll come back. People started trying to throw the whole Hassan Piker thing in my face, and it's clear they didn't know how that resolved. But I want to talk about some stuff today, and I want to be clear. I'm talking about certain portions of the gaming industry as opposed to the gaming community. The gaming community, yes, it has pockets of assholes, but it's so big that people can find their people. And regular rank and file, you just find a game and you love it and you play with people and you show up to events and, you go to conventions and cosplay things and at least in Toronto and the major cities I've been to, the fan-oriented conventions, they're very diverse. You get up into, especially gaming websites, but marketing companies and even certain game development companies, it looks very different. And I'm not talking about mobile gaming companies that somebody started with a bunch of their friends, your friends are your friends, right? They all went to work for you when they didn't get paid for 6 months, or they got paid a third of what they were worth. You just take those people where you can. Beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. I'm talking about the big companies that should know better and don't. And they lecture people on diversity, and yet their offices are monitors and white guys. with a few exceptions. Those are the people I'm talking about. That kind of hypocrisy. You know, the ones that decide it is their place to lecture the rest of us on how to be good people? Yeah. You may be hearing a lot of discussion about a certain type of person is worse than white supremacists. And you may be very upset by hearing people that you respect and you're fans of and you like saying things like this. It still bothers me, even though I know what they're saying. So, like, trust me when I say I get that internal rejection that you just can't quite turn off. That's informative. That allows you to build empathy. And that's why I want to talk about that. The truth is that even though it hurts, they have a point. The people that claim Martin Luther King said white moderates are worse than white supremacists, it's not actually what he said, for the record. So anybody who tries to hit you with that and pull an appeal to authority on that, he didn't actually say that. He says, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that he says, Negroes, great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. That is what that paragraph in letter from a Birmingham jail actually says. You notice there's a lot of caveats there. It's about a mindset. It's not white moderates are the problem. And the truth is, it's not even white moderates who are doing that right now that I'm seeing. It's white people on the left who are more interested in order than justice. And we have seen this in especially the games press. And I hate to be so constantly critical of the games press, but I used to work in the games press, hence me being critical of it, because they are the description of this type of white person. You know, if you're the kind of person who just has strong opinions and you just sort of tell it like it is and you're offensive sometimes, they're not talking about that. They're talking about the people who say, I support you, but. It's very unlikely that a gamer who is good with trash talk and all that stuff is gonna have a real problem with a loud protest, right? It's these people that claim to be for social justice and then claim mean words on the internet makes them terrified for their lives. The Amies. That is what he was referring to. Not people who don't want to take big, like, radical progressive steps. No, that's not what he was referring to. He was referring to people who talk a good game, but when it actually comes to doing something, they always find an excuse not to. And if you look at these gaming websites that have shoved their moralizing down our throats for quite a long time, they have plenty of LGBTQ plus people on staff. You know, do you see that many black faces? Do you see that many brown faces? You know, maybe some Asian people, maybe some Indian people, some Arab people, some Persian people, sure. But those races that did not, through colonization, have access to the British colonial school system. Do you see many people like that represented? Nope. That's the problem. That's the problem. The biggest leapfrog into equality is a job. And that doesn't mean you hire somebody because they're black. It means you make sure you are open in your hiring and promotion process to making sure that people in those communities are even aware that the job is available. And the big problem is, in a lot of these companies, it was started by friends and friends and friends, and all the hiring, even all the freelance work, is doled out through referrals. So somebody in the inside recommends somebody, hey, talk to this person. And we know that, especially in the US, intermixing, like, friend circles tend to be quite racially homogenous. And so that whole process, you know, the fact that they're not going out and they're not talking to people at events, they're not doing community events where people can come and show up and you can have a conversation with somebody who didn't have the right friends, they just showed up and they're really passionate about something. Unless you're doing that in communities that are fairly diverse, you are not really committed to equality. You talk a good game, but you don't do the work. You don't actually take the steps. And this is the stuff that people who complain about these outlets are reacting to, I believe. You know, one of the big perpetuators of whiteness is an intolerance for noise, an intolerance for ruckus, right? The whole idea surrounding harassment is very, it's whiteness personified. It's prim and proper, and it's really easy to be polite and have decorum when you're the people in charge, you know? And, you know, unless somebody's asking to speak to a manager. Not ask, demanding to speak to a manager. It's real easy for someone to say, I'm not going to talk to you while you're this hostile, when they don't require the opportunities that may come out of difficult situations. And this, ironically enough, this is something that people, you know, Black and brown people have been saying in the news a lot lately, but I think the people that need to hear it aren't picking up that they're talking about them, because they're so used to just nodding and smiling and not paying any attention to what a Black person says, because, well, they have to be a good ally and not respond to anything they say. They're just automatically right because of their lived experience. If you're not prepared to question somebody, you're not treating them like an equal, you're treating them like a child. You cannot work with a person you're not willing to question. You cannot manage someone you're not willing to question. You can't even expect to move up in a corporate structure if you're not prepared to question your boss respectfully from time to time. And these people who are champions of justice in gaming, sarcasm, that's what they do. They just sit there and they're like, I support your lived experience. They don't attempt to really understand. They don't ask, you know, they don't ask engaged questions. They don't go, well, what about this? Because they've been taught that's wrong. Well, this is just perpetuating the infanticization of Black and brown people. This is just continuing to assert that you are up here and they are down here, and that's why you're not arguing with them, because you want to help them. You need to help them, as if it isn't a question of, you got to remove the artificial limiters on them and just let them go, you know? No, you have to help them because they're not good enough on their own. And this is the attitude. Like, it is. And I get what people say when they say, I'd rather have someone be racist to my face than that nonsense. Because if somebody's racist to your face, you can call them out on it. When it's that polite dismissal, it's a totally different thing. And I can only imagine how bad the condescension is, because I know what I've gotten, and I'm just a woman. I'm still white. It's crazy. Like, oh, they're super nice. I've never taken any of my stuff, or they take one and then I find out what I'm about. Never again. And this is what happens. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, they support you. Oh, yes, until it comes time for them to actually have to do anything except leverage your circumstance for clicks for their website, which you are not making a cent off of because you didn't write the piece. No, then it's too polarizing. Oh, I wouldn't want them to get harassed. Oh, they don't fit the culture. Oh, we're not hiring right now. We don't have the budget for another staff writer. Oh, somebody was closer there. Oh, they already know the developer, so we gave it to them. Excuse after excuse after excuse that just perpetuates the established paradigm and does not let anyone new in the door. And this is just wrong. Okay? It's not cops killing black people wrong. It's not, on the scale of wrong and really, really wrong. This doesn't rate because somebody steals their life and they can go and get a job somewhere else. But these are good jobs. This is a fun industry. And you know what? The industry will benefit from these voices and from these opinions and from these perspectives and from this creativity. We are losing out because we don't have that perspective. And you can tell the companies that do have that perspective. One of my favorite scenes in Watch Dogs 2 was a scene where it's the two main black characters, a playable character, and then one of the other guys in the DedSec group at, I think they called it Noodle, not Google, but they actually go in there and they code switch. And, one of those very nice, kind of a Becky type comes in, oh, hi, and, oh, that's great. And it's like their voice goes up in pitch and all their vocalizations become different and they start talking through their nose because it's less threatening and everything. That's great. That's super. Okay. And then, the woman walks out, oh, happy your ponytail going. And then the one guy goes to the other and says, get out of here. You're scaring you're scaring them. I don't remember if they said they're scaring the white people, but that's what stayed in my head. And I just laughed at that scene. Because that, some people might not even encounter that scene. Some people might not even get why that scene's funny. And it's funny to people who understand how exhausting that is on a day-to-day basis. That you have to adopt the affected bearing of a completely different group of people so that you don't frighten them, so you can keep the good job, right? You're not getting the best work out of a person who has to code switch that much. Not coding, like code switch, the term for having to speak and behave in a way designed to keep white people comfortable instead of what is the way you talk around like your family, your friends, or the people that sort of are okay with a natural way of speaking. And I actually had to learn some of this white comfort stuff because I was socialized in a majority minority neighborhood. And so I picked up some of those affectations that were then, I was informed that they are aggressive and too dominant and bossy and people don't want to work with you and she's difficult and all these things. And, you can't claim you don't see race and you judge everybody the same if you can't handle the fact that even Italians and Jews are louder than, you know, the white people. There's just sort of a general thing that certain cultures are louder than others. And if you're not comfortable with that, you're not actually committed to diversity, because, you know, guess who you're not hiring because they make you uncomfortable. And if, you know, a black person you're totally fine with until they start speaking in a normal way for them, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's aggressive. You got a problem. I'm sorry. You know, there's legitimately aggressive, and then there's just, this is the way people talk when they're not given the luxury of BS because, you know, they grew up in Orange County kind of thing. And this is really important, and I'm sure a lot of people are really chafing at this. And again, rank and file gamers, I am not talking about you. You guys are the trash talkers. You guys are the shit posters. Of course I'm not talking about you. You know, I'm not even talking about the people who are, you know, flinging racist stuff at people online. Because you know what? That gets reported and that gets shut down. But when a person just refuses to respond to you because they think that makes them a good ally, that's a problem. You're not, that is not somebody who is going to help things get better. That is someone who is trying to protect their own status and their own slot on the pecking order. And they're not interested in letting other people in. They may think they are, but they're really not. They're interested in using the difficulties that other people encounter to get clicks for their articles and to generate their content so they can continue to earn money. But the people whose experience they are generating clicks from, well, they don't share in that wealth because they're not writing the articles. They're not employed at the company. That's wrong. That's wrong. If you think a group of people's situation is important enough to cover, put some money into it. Put some money into it. It's amazing how much of a difference it makes. And it is difficult at first. I put my money where my mouth was on this one. And I did the late night comedy show, Ed and Red's Night Party. It started off, there were go-go dancers in the show. You know, I had a professional dance background. I came in, it's like, you know, no, this is Toronto. We need a multicultural cast. We need to show that different types of beauty are beautiful. And so we did a casting call. And of course, mostly white girls showed up. Of course they did. They saw who was on the show, right? Couple women of color showed up. They happened to be really good, so they got hired. But that wasn't enough. And most people go, well, you know, we did the casting call. Nobody showed up. No, you have to go out and find people, you know, especially people from cultures where, you know, sexy dancing is maybe frowned upon, like Middle Eastern cultures. Finally found a woman who ended up going on to be Miss Pakistan World. Like, but you can't just sit and go, well, nobody showed up. You know, that's like saying, oh, you know, I want to hire a vegan. Why didn't they come to our barbecue where we only serve meat? Gee, how'd that work? Why didn't that happen? I went out and I asked around and I made, you know, the dancers aware of, look, this is the initiative. This is what we're going for. If you know anyone, please let me know. And they did. We got recommended to people and they were great. And it broadened it. And eventually we had, you know, it was funny because a couple buddies of mine who were kind of pigs, where women were concerned, but they'd come in and they'd look around and be like, I don't know where to look. And one buddy of mine, he was kind of a dog, but he said, like, this is so much better. He said, normally it's like they all look the same, and why would I want them to all look the same? Then I can just like have one of them to look at. And I'm like, okay, he was the right guy to focus group my hiring decisions, because that's the mindset I'm going for. But there's an example of how you can make multiple groups of people happy just from very authentic decisions. You know, it's not overthought. It's not preached. We didn't go on the show and say, look at what good people we are. Because it was, you know, girls in sexy costumes that were dancing and like joking and, you know, eating chocolate and being in a hot tub and stuff like that. Hardly like, you know, what some people would consider civil rights work. But what it was, it's like, you know what? These are women hired because they're beautiful. Look at the diversity of what we consider beautiful. And let me tell you, the plus size girls were very, very popular. just shows that what's shown in Hollywood is definitely not catering to the spectrum of male taste at all. It's getting better, but that's really it. Like, it's not making a big deal out of it. It's not trotting people out like show ponies to show how diverse you are. It's just when you have the opportunity to do something, frickin' just do it. Stop talking about it. And I think that's why people find the pedantic lecturing that's coming out of these websites, because you care so much about women. Why isn't half your staff women? Pull a Trudeau. Gender parity in cabinet, right? Of course not, because then either they'd have to like double their staff or let some people go, and they're all their buddies, man. Those websites, like the Polygon guys, they all travel in packs at E3. Like, there's just this clump of them. You know, you care so much about diversity. You care so much about people of color. Why aren't you hiring them? The most powerful message you send to people is your staff. You know, what your staff page looks like. And there are more women at CD Projekt Red than most gaming websites. I think there might actually be more people of color at CD Projekt Red than most gaming sites, and they're Polish. Okay? Like, it's nuts. And, you know, the last thing I want to touch on is I've noticed this dichotomy in game casting, that they'll get black guys to do black characters. They'll get black guys to voice act black characters. But so many black women in video games are voiced by people who are not black. And, you know, Ubisoft managed to do it with Far Cry Primal because that's all motion cap. They couldn't redub the voices. But when you think about it, I mean, half of them are Laura Bailey. I mean, not half. That's an exaggeration. But Nadine from Uncharted, Laura Bailey. Kate Diaz, Laura Bailey. Okay? Vivienne from Dragon Age. And I love the actress that plays her. Indira something. But, you know, I'm pretty sure she's the Indian background. And okay, that's not white, but that's not black either. And that doesn't mean you have to match everything. But I just notice that, you know, Ice-T's and Gears of War, and like there's Coltrane, and there's like black guys who are in Halo and Call of Duty and all that stuff. But women, they're you know, they give them dark skin, but they don't hire black women to do the voices. That says a lot. Like, that says a lot about what's considered acceptable, what is considered feminine, what's considered desirable by the people making these games. And again, if you're not going to preach at people about diversity and all that stuff, no contradiction. But when you start doing that, your creative decisions better match your rhetoric. And until they do, I'm going to keep calling BS, because you know what? I call BS, you might listen to me, because this doesn't benefit me in terms of a job. Like, I'm saying, no, actually have, more black characters and get black people to voice them. I am not up for that job. Okay? Which is why I think it's important to say that stuff. And like, I think black people should be open to every role. Like, Kratos tends to be voiced by a black guy. That's awesome, right? But I'd love to see more black women getting those opportunities too. Because something's really wrong about that obvious, like, discrepancy there. And again, you don't lecture people. Do what you want. You're being consistent. But when you want those points for, we are an inclusive company, we're saying important things about women. Well, if you're saying important things about women, when you're pulling the hashtag feminism thing, but even your black women need to sound white, you are sending a message about what you think is acceptable femininity. And it's not okay with me. I see you. I call you out. Okay, if you like this kind of stuff, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.